In our previous session, we discussed atoms. We defined atoms, molecules, ions. We also looked at a very basic, very simple structure of an atom with the nucleus, a very small, dense body sitting in the middle with electron cloud all around it, and the nucleus is the one that contains all the protons and neutrons in the atom. We also talked about the charge neutrality of an atom. In other words, the total number of protons must equal the total number of electrons in an atom, because an atom by definition has an overall charge of zero. So let's delve a little bit more into an atom. Every atom of every element is characterized by a few numbers that give us very important pieces of information. The first such number that we will discuss is called the atomic number. The atomic number is given a symbol Z, and that equals the number of protons in the nucleus of that atom. The atomic number is given in the periodic table. So if you look at a periodic table, please go ahead and get one at this point in time. Any one doesn't matter. But every element in the periodic table is assigned a box, a chamber, a cell. And each one of those has some very basic information about that element. Now, every periodic table, if you Google periodic tables online, you will see different kinds of periodic tables. Some are more detailed than others. But there are some pieces of information that all periodic tables will contain. In other words, all periodic table will give the symbol of an element. For example, Mo being molybdenum, C being carbon, N being nitrogen, RH being rhodium, so on and so forth. In some of my previous sessions, I did ask you to memorize the names and corresponding symbols of some common elements. Please make sure you are working on it. Some periodic tables, definitely not the ones that you will be using during exams, also may have the name of an element. As I said, ours will not, so you need to memorize the ones that you were asked to. But all periodic tables will contain two numbers. A number above the symbol of the element called the atomic number, the Z value, and a number below the symbol of the element called the atomic mass. Atomic mass will be discussed in more detail at a later time in this class, but a couple of sessions down the road. For now, we'll focus on atomic number. As we said, atomic number, the Z value, is equal to the number of protons in the nucleus of an atom. It is an information that you can get from the periodic table, and if you scan the periodic table, you will notice that all Z values are integer values. It is not possible to have fractional number of protons, hence it is not possible to have fractional atomic numbers. All atomic numbers must be integer values. Atomic number is the identifier of an element. It is the Z value that tells us which element an atom belongs to. The reason being that, if you remember again in a previous session, I said atoms of the same element are similar to each other. They're not exactly the same. They do have some similarities and some differences. One thing that must always be the same between atoms of the same element is that every atom of that element must have the same Z value. In other words, must have the same number of protons in the nucleus of that atom. If there are two atoms that have the same number of protons in the nucleus, then it is assumed that it is understood that those two atoms belong to the same element. If, on the other hand, if there were two atoms that have different number of protons, then those atoms must belong to different elements. So please remember, the Z value is an identifier of elements, excuse me. So when we look at the periodic table and we see Z equal to 6, we automatically know that we are referring to carbon. And if I'm referring to Z equal to 37, then we are referring to the element rubidium. Every single atom of the element tin, Sn, must have Z equal to 50, in other words 50 protons in the nucleus. So Z value is very important because it identifies each element. Using this information, let's complete this table. So if you know the z-value of a certain element, you can then go ahead and identify the element, or if you know the element, you can find out its z-value. So if z is equal to 36, and if you look at the periodic table, you will notice that that z-value corresponds to the element krypton, which has a symbol uppercase A, lowercase r. Calcium has a symbol uppercase C, lowercase a, and from the periodic table you can determine its z-value being equal to 20. Z equal to 26 corresponds to the element iron, which has a symbol uppercase F, lowercase e. Mercury has a symbol uppercase H, lowercase g, and has a z-value equal to 80. Now, once again, to reiterate, what is the meaning, what is the importance of the z-value? The z-value equals the number of protons, which means that every atom of krypton will have 36 protons in their nuclei. Every atom of calcium will have 20 protons in their nuclei. Similarly, number of protons in every atom of iron equals 26, and that for mercury equals 80. So to reiterate, every atom of an element, given element, must have the same z-value, in other words, the same number of protons. Now, in an earlier session, we emphasized on the fact that an atom, by definition, must be charge neutral. In other words, the total number of positive charge in an atom must equal the total number of negative charge, which basically translates into the fact that for an atom, the number of protons equals the number of electrons. Now, please note, it is only for an atom. That is not the case for, let's say, ions. So, given this information, since Z equals number of protons, that also therefore can give us the number of electrons in the atom of that element. Using this information, let's complete the table below. Again, you need to refer to a periodic table, so keep one handy. I'll do the first couple and then you can pause the video and complete the rest of the table. If you look at the periodic table, palladium, Pd, has a z-value equal to 46, which means that it has 46 protons in the nucleus and 46 electrons outside of the nucleus. If an element has 34, Z equal to 34, that element is selenium, symbol Se. If there is Z is 34, then there are 34 protons in the nucleus and 34 electrons in outside of the nucleus. And I'm sure using this strategy you can complete the table. Is the nucleus charged? An atom is not charged, but is a nucleus charged? Absolutely. The nucleus does have a charge, and that charge can be called, let's say, the nuclear charge, the charge of a nucleus. What will be the sign of the nuclear charge? Absolutely, plus, because the only particles that are contributing to that charge in a nucleus are protons, and each proton has a charge of +1. So if I were to ask you the nuclear charge of each of these elements, basically for palladium, since there are 46 protons in the nucleus, the charge of the nucleus is 46 plus. Similarly, the charge of selenium, since there are 34 protons, will be 34 plus. You must give the magnitude of the charge as well as the sign of the charge. So using this information, please feel free to pause the recording for a minute or two and complete the table.